Hello, my name is Kleinke. My colleague Jonathan Weaver just covered part 1, Systematic Innovation Tools, and I'll be covering the innovation culture, process, and strategy, the second half of our innovation collection. So hopefully you enjoy these tools as well. One of the things we found when we work with students and with our participants in our workshops, typically the problem statement is not well understood. We found this out the hard way. Many times participants would get halfway through the workshop and discover, well, we're not all agreed on exactly what the problem is. And so we instituted this tool called Search for the Problem. You see on the screen 5 different methods for investigating the correct problem statement. My favorite is the first one, that's why it's first. Statement and restatement. Essentially, have our participants or students write down what they think the real problem is that they're working on and restate it in different ways, stronger terms, lesser terms, emphasizing different words. What we find is frequently the team members are not on the same page, they don't all agree on the problem statement, they emphasize different things, and this process helps our students and our participants really develop a solid problem statement. And perhaps even more important than the problem statement itself is the dialogue that goes along with it. The students start to realize how you can work together to generate problem statements, or using any of the ideation tools previously in a more collaborative way that builds teamwork. Another tool that we think is very significant and we find is perhaps the most effective tool of all, this method from Edward de Bono called the 6 hats method. You may recognize that name, de Bono. In the first half of the presentation we talked about some tools, one particular called Concept Fan and another one called Provocation, also by Edward de Bono. De Bono is probably the most well-known innovation expert worldwide. This method, the 6 hats method, uses a simple technique, just like putting on hats. You might even think of the phrase when you were in kindergarten, let's put on our thinking caps. Uses that phrase as a jumping off point for teams to work together to systematically approach any particular problem. And you can see the 6 hats are listed there. And here's how it works. When the group gets together, each hat is handled one at a time. For instance, the white hat you see at the top. The color, just as a memory aid, helps us remember what topic we're talking about. In this case, white is only about information. All the participants in the room should be only talking about the facts and figures. White indicating you might think of clean sheets of paper with information written on it. You might think pure as the driven snow, no dirt, no erase marks, only the facts. Collectively then, the group moves on to the next hat. Once they've identified all the data from white hat, they would move on to, for instance, red hat might be the next one. Red hat's the emotion hat. In this case, all the participants simultaneously switch over their thinking style to emotion. Whether it's their personal emotions, how do you feel about a product, how do you feel about a project, how do you feel about the rest of the team members, or you might talk about how do the various stakeholders involved in a project address an issue. How do your customers feel about your product? One example I like to give is a Mustang convertible. Sold, in my opinion, purely on emotion. The vehicle has very little practical purpose, and yet everyone seems to want one. I know I do. The third hat listed, the black hat, this is the caution hat. And de Bono has a theory here about this black hat, in that we are by nature cautious individuals. That's how our species has survived, by being very cautious, not taking unnecessary risks. Don't move too close to that cliff, you might fall off. Don't try and beat that bus across the road, you might get run over. And so by natural development, our species has become extremely cautious. I would suggest to you next time you're in a meeting, take a look around and listen to what people are saying, and you'll find when anyone puts out a new idea, most likely the black hats will come out. Ooh, that's not going to work. That's been tried before. That's not how we do things here. That's wrong. That's just bad. This is actually a good discussion, but it needs to be contained. If every time someone suggests a new idea you only black hat, well, generally ideas don't get put on the table much after that. The next hat, the yellow hat, the very opposite of black hat, and we find both our students and our workshop participants really struggle with this one. When a new idea is put on the table, let's all be optimistic about it. What are the positive aspects? Where can we go if we solve this problem? And unlike black hat, the room gets very quiet, very few suggestions. We also find that if we systematically use black hat, yellow hat in order and convince the whole room to simultaneously switch hats, they're able to do it, and they become much more effective. The green hat, that's the creativity hat. Visualize open pastures. You can run any direction. Here's the place where you'd use all those innovation tools Dr. Weaver just told you about. So you could try biassociation, biomimicry, provocation, concept fan, axiomatic design. Lots of ways to create ideas. And finally, the last hat, the blue hat, the procedure hat. We think about the blue sky over us, and we think about how do we form a way forward now that we've got facts and figures, we've got the emotion of our customers and ourselves understood and on the table. We know our cautions from the black hat. We know what optimistically can be possible from the yellow hat. We've got lots of ideas to choose from green hat. Now blue hat, what's the way forward? This is a very effective tool. We think if only one tool is taught, it should be this one. So we suggest give it a try. Another tool that relates to culture and mindset and how people perform and think about their products is this TheConnell Model. You may be familiar with it. If you look on the horizontal axis, you see a degree of achievement all the way from the left end, not implemented, so an idea that's never been implemented before would be on the left. And an idea that's very mature, been out there a long time, might be all the way on the right. The vertical axis goes from customer satisfaction, very positive up top, to customers not so happy, in fact, quite angry about your product below. Three lines represent different types of products and where they are in their product life cycle. The top line, starting at not implemented, might be an exciting new product, something that's not been out there before, gets people's attention. The middle line, performance related. This is when a product's been in production for some time, and now the competitors are competing based on who's got more features, whose features are better, whose features are less expensive, whose features work better, mostly performance. And finally, as a product matures in its lifetime, the final curved line where it's only negative is the basic. We just expect that product, that new feature should be in our product. I like to use the example of cup holders. At one point in time, the cup holder was an exciting new feature. Vehicles didn't have a way to support your drink cup. That was when it was exciting. It moved into performance-related mode when Chrysler in particular came along with multiple cup holders, some in the front, some in the back, some of them heated and lighted. So the competition was on for more and more and better cup holders. And finally, it arrives at the basic mode. If your vehicle doesn't have a cup holder today, it's just not a good product. So that's the TheConnell Model. Another strategy tool, you maybe have heard of this one for those of you that have taken some business courses. This is the blue ocean strategy. The analogy comes from, or the metaphor comes from the blue ocean. We think about if I was a shark swimming out in that ocean and I found some area that was full of bait fish, and I would go feed in that area. That's a nice, wonderful blue ocean. But as I begin to feed, the ocean turns a little red and a little bloody. and the other sharks start to find out where the good feeding place is, and they start to show up and they start to feed, and more sharks, and quickly the ocean becomes very red. This is the metaphor for our business. Businesses start that way. You might have a great new product, starts out in the blue ocean, and competitors begin to show up, and it gets redder and redder. The competition gets tougher and tougher. In this case, the chart you see on the screen relates to a new business in the wine-making business. In this particular case, the company was Yellowtail Wines. They looked at what categories constitute the red ocean, and there you see all the competitors are competing in price and aging quality and wine complexity and wine range. Yellowtail asked the question, well, can we create or look for a blue ocean? And so they did some lateral benchmarking, one of the tools we talked about earlier. The lateral benchmarking, they went to look at the beer industry. Why do people select different beers? And they found, oh, the categories were quite different. People select beer based on easy drinking, ease of selection, fun and adventure even. And so Yellowtail set their product up with these new categories as their feature. And you can see not only did they emphasize these new categories, they really became the lowest cost and cheapest in the existing categories. Yellowtail started a whole new market and a whole new blue ocean. And so this is something we share with our students, to look for blue oceans. Understand whether you're competing in a red ocean, are you headed for the blue ocean, can you create a new market? Another tool that relates to the market out there is a tool called 9 Windows. In this case, you see a matrix, a 3x3 matrix. Along the horizontal axis, you see time, past, present, future. And along the vertical axis, I like to call it hierarchy, product hierarchy. And whatever product I'm working on or thinking about, I place in the middle. You see the star, you are here. I call it a subsystem. That helps me remember that part of my subsystem includes components below me and bigger systems above me. The interesting thing here is, as we have our students study not just the past, or not just the current products and benchmark current products, look at where the products have been recently, in the recent past. And also look to the future. Do you see trends? Do you see things in the literature? Again, this is not speculation about the future. This is research data, research publications regarding future trends. Do you see them coming? Do you see some trend in the system level that perhaps isn't showing up so much in the component level? Or has there been a breakthrough? I like to point to LED lighting, for instance, in automobiles. The component technology has moved quickly. And there are many, many options now for LED lighting. And yet, if you look at the subsystem, which would be parking lamps and so forth, they're coming along, and yet the system is far, far behind quarter panels and tail lamp systems and rear end of the vehicles, still the same. Perhaps there's a blue ocean here. Another thing we like to have our participants and students think about, what really is an innovator? And is that you? We think the characteristics of an innovator are these. You are partly an inventor, and so as an inventor, you're attentive to the needs of customers. Where is that blue ocean? Where is that market opening? And am I eager to clearly explain my idea? Like it or not, Mr. Engineer, if you're going to sell your idea or convince someone else to produce and manufacture it, you must clearly explain it and so we regularly show our students how to do so. The innovator is also part entrepreneur, and this is the part that I think we're perhaps becoming the best in the country at, teaching our students and our participants how to think like an entrepreneur. That means they must be passionate about commercialization. How do I get my product to market? They must be eager to make a business proposition. And this is something that most engineers really struggle with. Be prepared for setbacks. Yes, failure is an option. And if you fail early, you will succeed sooner. In fact, that's the mantra of IDEO. Fail early to succeed sooner. We also use this slide to help our students and participants do a little introspection. Are you an innovator or are you an implementer? And what difference does it make? You see in two of the quadrants the smiley faces. If I know my job requires me to be an innovator and I know my thinking tendency is so, everyone's happy. Same with implementer. But what if I know my job requires me to be innovative, but I really think like an implementer? Well, I need to work on adapting here. I need to force myself to think about alternatives. Or what if I know my job requires implementation, and yet I think more like an innovator? Again, I need to adapt. So who are you? How do you naturally think? What are your tendencies? And can you adjust? We want you to be the best you can be for your new employer, so know your job requirements, know your thinking tendencies, and adapt accordingly. This is a nice tool. It's called Will It Fly? There's a book out there. His author's last name is McKnight, who has come up with a nice score sheet method. You can take any innovative idea, score it against, in this case we're showing the summary sheet. We break it down into 4 major categories. There are actually 44 subcategories. Things like how tough is the competition? How good is the competition? When do you see that you'll get a return on your investment? In fact, even some intangible items like, can you get a celebrity to endorse your product? Based on those scores, this score sheet has a simple formula. It says if your idea scores 75% of the points, or 70% of the points, it's ready to fly. If not, like in this case example we're showing, it scored 65, it shows you what areas you could improve. So a nice simple tool that we show our students to use. For those of you familiar with Clayton Christensen's work, The Innovator's Dilemma, this is a single slide that we use. Again, if you think back to that TheConnell Model, we talked about products that are established, products that are competing based on performance. That would be that established product line you see going upward. Clayton Christensen has identified that disruptive products have a different characteristic. In fact, they're probably less feature-laden than the existing products out there, and yet combine things in a new and different way. Sounds like by association, doesn't it? So if our students are taught this simple tool by association, they can recognize the TheConnell Model. Where does this product lie in the current marketplace? They've got a chance to come up with something disruptive and really help their new employer. Finally, once you have a great idea, somehow you've got to implement this thing. We love to show our students that there's a lot of work to implementation as well. In this case, the big circle shows the current production of whatever product whatever organization or corporate organization you work in. A lot of people support that ongoing production. But if you're going to get your new idea implemented, you need to consider these 3 major factors. First one is depth. Does your company have the expertise it needs to launch your product? If not, where can you get it? Second one is power. Once your new innovation is launched and you're attempting to implement it and someone else is going to be in power than previous, there's going to be a power struggle that might prevent your implementation. And the final item is operating rhythm. Does your new idea fit into the existing production process, or are you hoping for something new and different? Well, that's a very brief summary of several culture and organizational tools. We think these tools, combined with the ideation method, is the full package. We've interviewed our students that have been in the corporate world for 3 or 4 years after graduating here, and they report back that having these tools, or an understanding of these tools and understanding of this culture, has really given them an advantage in the marketplace. The final piece of our presentation today, part 3, Dwayne Spiteman and Mike Kane are our colleagues that work with our company, Innovation in Action, and they'd like to discuss with you how these tools in our company and our type of projects that we and workshops that we offer can be used to help advance the University of Detroit Mercy and our students.